Babel, or the Necessity of Violence, An Arcane History of the Oxford Translator's Revolution by Rebecca F. Kuang is a profound and genre-defying fantasy novel that blends historical fiction, dark academia, linguistic theory, and post-colonial critique. Set in an alternate 19th-century Oxford, the story revolves around the intersection of language, empire, and magic. Through its complex characters, deep world-building, and powerful exploration of colonialism, Kuang presents an intellectually rich narrative that questions the ethics of knowledge, power, and rebellion. Summary. The story follows Robin Swift, a young Chinese orphan who is taken from Canton, Guangzhou, to England after the death of his family. He is adopted by Professor Richard Lovell, a mysterious British academic, and brought to Oxford to study at the Royal Institute of Translation, colloquially known as Babel. Babel, which represents the heart of the British Empire's magical dominance, is an elite institution that trains students in translation. It's here that silverworking, a unique form of magic powered by the nuances of translation, is practiced. Through the manipulation of language pairs, the scholars create magical silver bars that power the Empire's technology and infrastructure, reinforcing Britain's global supremacy. Robin quickly learns that Babel is not merely a center for academic learning, but a key institution in maintaining the British Empire's colonial hegemony. The magic of translation and silverworking is exploited to enhance the empire's wealth and suppress colonized nations by stripping languages of their meaning, thus weakening the cultures that speak them. As a foreigner, Robin struggles with his identity. He is both a beneficiary of Babel's education and a victim of its imperialist agenda. This tension drives much of the novel's emotional and political depth. Robin's life takes a dramatic turn when he meets other marginalized students at Babel, such as Rami, an Indian student, Victoire, a Haitian-born Creole, and Letty, an Englishwoman. Together they navigate the complexities of being outsiders in an institution that systematically exploits people like them. The more Robin learns about Babel's true nature, the more disillusioned he becomes. As Robin grapples with his conflicted loyalties, he encounters the Hermes Society, a secret organization that works to sabotage Babel's silverworking operations and resist British colonial rule. The group is dedicated to using Babel's own magic against the Empire, revealing to Robin that translation can be both a tool of oppression and a weapon of revolution. Faced with a moral dilemma, Robin must decide whether to continue benefiting from Babel's resources or join the resistance to dismantle the very system that gave him access to power. Robin's growing involvement in the revolution ultimately leads to a violent and tragic climax. He and his friends find themselves at the forefront of a rebellion, forced to confront the costs of resistance, the limits of moral compromise, and the devastating consequences of violence. The novel ends with Robin making a radical choice, one that reflects both the necessity and futility of resistance in the face of overwhelming power. Analysis. Theme of language and power. At the heart of Babel lies a deep exploration of the relationship between language and power. Kuang draws attention to the ways in which language is not merely a tool for communication, but also a means of control and subjugation. The translation work at Babel mirrors the extractive nature of colonialism itself, as the British Empire appropriates languages and cultures to fuel its expansion. Silverworking, which relies on the magical potential of translation, symbolizes the way empires strip meaning from colonized languages, rendering them powerless. Kuang's portrayal of translation as both an art and a weapon raises important questions about who controls language and who benefits from its use. Robin and his fellow students, who come from colonized regions, are forced to reconcile their roles as both translators, facilitators of empire, and individuals who are culturally and politically oppressed by the very system they support. This dynamic creates a sense of internal conflict, as they struggle with the ethics of using language for personal gain while knowing its broader societal harm. Colonialism and resistance. Babel is a scathing critique of colonialism, especially the British Empire's exploitation of its colonies for material and cultural wealth. Through Robin's story, Kuang exposes the hypocrisy of Enlightenment ideals that claim to promote knowledge and progress while justifying oppression and extraction. Babel represents the intellectual elite that aids and abets empire building, using the pursuit of knowledge as a smokescreen for more sinister goals. Robin's awakening to the realities of empire and his eventual involvement with the Hermes Society underscore the theme of resistance. The Hermes society embodies the idea that rebellion is not only justified but necessary, even if it requires violence. However, Kuang complicates this narrative by showing the moral ambiguities of resistance. The novel does not present a clear-cut answer about the ethics of revolution, instead exploring the costs of both complicity and rebellion. Robin's ultimate choice to engage in radical, violent resistance forces readers to confront the question: is violence a necessary tool in the fight against systemic oppression, or does it merely perpetuate the cycle of destruction? Identity and belonging. Robin's internal struggle with his identity as both a Chinese orphan and a scholar at Babel speaks to larger themes of belonging and alienation. As a non-white student in a predominantly white institution, he constantly feels out of place, caught between two worlds. Babel offers him the opportunity to escape poverty and gain prestige, but it also forces him to participate in a system that devalues his culture and heritage. This duality creates an ongoing tension in Robin's character, as he wrestles with the question of whether it is possible to belong to an institution that thrives on the oppression of his people. Robin's friendships with Rami, Victoire, and Letty further complicate his sense of belonging. Each character represents a different facet of the colonial experience, and their interactions provide a rich exploration of how identity, race, and privilege intersect within Babel. Letty's privileged position as a white woman highlights the gendered and racial hierarchies within the institution, while Rami and Victoire's experiences as colonized subjects underscore the shared struggles of marginalized people, even as they navigate different forms of oppression. Knowledge as a double-edged sword. One of the novel's central ideas is the ambivalence of knowledge. Babel, as a repository of the world's linguistic and cultural knowledge, represents the highest form of intellectual achievement. Yet this knowledge is also weaponized to maintain British dominance. Kuang critiques the idea that knowledge in itself is inherently good, showing that it can be co-opted to serve the interests of those in power. For Robin, knowledge becomes a battleground. On one hand, his education at Babel opens doors for him and provides him with skills that elevate his status. On the other hand, he becomes painfully aware that this very knowledge is used to subjugate others. His eventual turn against Babel is a rejection of the idea that intellectual advancement can be divorced from its political and ethical consequences. Robin's journey raises important questions about the role of academia in perpetuating systems of power, and the responsibilities of scholars in challenging those systems. Conclusion. Babel by Rebecca F. Kuang is a richly layered novel that defies easy categorization. It is a gripping fantasy tale, a historical reimagining, and a sharp critique of colonialism and the power structures embedded in language and knowledge. Through its complex characters, particularly Robin Swift, the novel explores the tension between complicity and resistance, the moral ambiguities of revolution, and the ways in which language can be both a tool of liberation and a mechanism of control. Kuang's novel challenges readers to think critically about the ways in which power operates through institutions, whether they be academic, linguistic, or imperial. It is a thought-provoking exploration of identity, loyalty, and the costs of knowledge, leaving readers with no easy answers but a deep sense of the complexities of human struggle in the face of systemic oppression.